Hi, and welcome. Now, I first want to congratulate you on this incredible journey of the mental game to allow you to access the resources within so that you can be and become your best. My name is Dr. Matt Park. I'm part of the MPGA team. The first thing I want to talk to you about is emotional and arousal management. So, what is emotional and arousal management? Well, as human beings, we all have emotions, we all have feelings, and certain things trigger certain emotions. And I'm sure many of you have seen the movie Inside Out and Inside Out 2. We as human beings are very complex. We're a mixture of so many different emotions, and certain events, certain phrases, words, or scenarios may trigger certain emotions. And many of us have not necessarily gone inside of ourselves to unpack the different types of emotions we have. But we have very basic and very complex emotions. Some are very big and loud and prominent. Some are very small and it packs a powerful punch, but it's right there inside of us. Understanding and being aware of the emotions that you have is the first step towards composure. Now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about theory on stress and arousal management. Now, this theory dates all the way back to 1908, and it came from researchers and psychologists named Yerkes and Dotson. Yerkes and Dotson created this law on performance, how we perform, and our stress level, essentially our arousal, our energy inside of ourselves. So they said that a certain amount of stress is actually healthy for optimal performance. Now, it looks something like this. Now, if you look at this graph, you see that on the x axis, going from right to left, is stress, right? That's your arousal, your energy level. On the y axis, going up and down vertically, you'll see performance. Now, what Yerkes and Dotson's law basically states is that if you have very little stress, very little arousal, very little energy, then your performance is going to suffer. You're going to be bored. You're probably going to be distracted. You're not going to be focused. So your performance suffers. Your performance is low. On the flip side, if you have too much arousal, too much energy, too much stress, and it's uncontrollable, it's out of hand, whether you're overly excited or overly stressed, your performance will suffer. Now, Yerkes and Dotson's law essentially says there's a sweet spot right in the middle. Some might be a little bit before middle, some might be right after the middle, but a little bit of stress and energy is actually healthy for optimal performance. Now, think about the times where you were performing your best. It could be at an event, a college event, it could be at a tournament that you played in recently, and think about what you felt inside. Many of you might be experiencing a lot of different emotions, but if you really think about what you felt, I'm sure there was a little bit of energy and a little bit of arousal that got you in that peak state. When we as humans get stressed, when something triggers us, there are four different types of responses naturally that we have to these reactions. Number one, and you've heard of this, our sympathetic nervous system gets activated and we either lean in and fight, right? Whatever's coming at us, a saber-toothed tiger or the first T jitters, some of us have a response of fighting, leaning in. Some of us, myself included, we flight. We run away from conflict, right? Anytime there is a stressful situation, sometimes a difficult conversation or something that we feel very anxious and nervous about, our natural tendency is to flight, is to run out the door. Another response is to freeze, where our body shuts down. Exteriorly and internally, we are like a sitting duck above water. Like we are going, but we're freezing up. Another response is what we call fawn or submission. We just get smaller. We submit to the authority, to power, to the circumstance, and we become like a fawn or like a baby deer, or we submit. There's a fifth response that I want to talk to you about today, and it's called flow. In order for us to get into the flow state, it requires an activation of our energy and our arousal to really bring up our place and heightened sense of awareness to be able to get into our zone, which leads us to our second theory today. Now, I bet many of you didn't know that I was going to be talking to you about psychological theories, but I'm going to really break it down to help you get better clarity of what researchers did on how we can actually apply it in a sports setting to better our performance. The second theory I want to talk about is called eyes off. It's developed by Hannon, and it stands for individual zone of optimal functioning, eyes off. Now, Hannon looked at the Yerkes and Dotson's law and realized that, many of us are very different. Our makeup, our environment, our culture, our upbringing, we have different personalities, and our zones might not always be right in the middle for optimal performance. Maybe some of us have different zones that we can be in that allows us to stay in our composed zone. If we are in that particular zone that's unique to us, that's what we call composed. Now, it doesn't always have to be cool as a cucumber. It can look and feel very different based upon your zone, according to Hannon's eyes off theory. So, what is the eyes off theory and what does it look like? Essentially, there are three different players. Player number one, if you think about people like Jason Duffner or Ernie Els, Freddie Couples, maybe Annika Sorenstam, if you think about these players, think about their temperament. Many of us would say they are cool as a cucumber, right? They are just chill and relaxed. And remember those memes that were going out there years before on the Duffner pose, where he was kind of at his daughter's or son's school and slouched over on the wall, and everybody started doing the Duffner pose. Like he is what we think is the epitome of relaxed and composed. But that's his definition of composed, right? He's just very mellow. That's where he plays his best. That's where he gets into his flow state. Hannon would call that low eyes off. So Jason Duffner, Annika Sorenstam, Ernie Els, Freddie Couples, think about what they have in common. They are identified as peak performers who perform their best when they're in their low eyes off. That means their energy and arousal is more composed and controlled. It's not heightened, right? It's not intense. It's more relaxed, calm, in a mindful state. That's where their peak performance zone is. So they do the things and exercises mentally, emotionally, physically to get them in their peak performing state. You follow? Okay. Now, on the flip side, I'm going to go to the extreme. Hannon would say there's something called a high eyes off, and we'll call them player three for this example. High eyes off are those who are very intense, who get in their zone by maybe slapping their face before matches or, you know, listening to motivational songs. Think about people in your circle, people that come up for you. Maybe for me, images like Keegan Bradley is kind of intense, right? He has that intensity about him. You think about even Tiger Woods. Yeah, he's intensely focused, but look at how he celebrates. Look at his intensity. Or Suzanne Pedersen, right? Think about some of these players and the emotional makeup of these players. Now, can we say that they're composed? Yeah, they're composed in their own element. They have a composure and a professionalism to them, but they get in their peak performing state by identifying that these certain emotions elicit strong emotions to get them focused. That's what we call player three, high eyes off. All right. So medium eyes off is what Yerkes and Dotson's law states, where it's not too high and not too low. It's right in the middle. So we'll call them player two. And these are players like, for example, Adam Scott, or let's say Graham McDowell, or, you know, whoever comes in your circle or who you might think would be a medium eyes off. You might even be a medium eyes off, where you perform your best when you're not too highly elicited with emotions or low and calm and cool as a cucumber. You have a little bit of intensity, a little bit of stress and arousal, but it gets you in that zone. That's what we call player two, medium eyes off. So let's do a little summary and a recap of what we discussed in this video. First, we identified that we as humans have a mixture of emotions, kind of like that Inside Out movie, right? We're a makeup of many different emotions. Some are really big, some are hidden and small, but it's still there. It's still part of us. And identifying that we are very complex and that we are a makeup of many different emotions is a first step towards being more composed, believe it or not. Now, we talked also about two different psychological theories. One, Yerkes and Dotson's law is basically, it looks like a mountain, like an inverted U, where it measured stress and arousal level and performance and its impact on performance. If you had very little stress, if you were bored, if you weren't really activated, your performance will suffer. If you were too activated and too aroused, your performance will suffer. So finding that balance of just getting in that Goldilocks principle right in the middle is where you perform your best. And then later on, we learned about eyes off, the individual zone of optimal functioning. And eyes off basically states that we all have different zones that we perform our best in. Some are low, player one, where we're like, Lydia Ko, Annika Sorenstam, kind of cool as a cucumber. Our initial impression or assumption of what composed looks like, that's player one. Player two is medium eyes off. Basically, it's that Yerkes and Dotson's not too low, not too high, right in the middle. And then third, we have player three, the high eyes off, the intensity, drinking Red Bulls before matches, getting in that zone. And you know what? Believe it or not, for them, that's where they perform their best. And that's where they want to be. And composed might look very different for player three versus a player one. Composure is about professionalism, is about conducting yourself as a brand that you want to represent, that you're proud of. But we all have individual zones where we perform our best.